stop making excuses. You're going to be sick, you're going to be decrepit, and you're going to be relying on governments your whole life and mega corporations in order to live. I've just been fertilizing the plants and giving them mulch and watering as well. And fertilizer, I don't mean chemicals. I mean my own urine, my own excrement, these kind of things. Putting mulch on top, urinating on the plants. Yeah, when certain trees look like they're losing leaves or they're dying a little bit, there's two reasons. First, because the soil needs more vitality, more life. So you give urine, you give compost, you give mulch. Mulch is basically all the dead leaves, all the dead wood, and I don't mean dead, they're actually dead. There's still life in them. It gives nutrients and other elements to the soil and to the plants that are needed. So, oh, hi friend, I love you. So I've been doing that. We never use in Peaceful Village any chemical fertilizers except our own fertilizers. So nothing from domesticated animals, no blood meal, bone meal, fish meal, animal manure, all this kind of stuff. Hi, butterfly. Nice to see you. Hello and welcome to the most peaceful place where the fruiting plants and animals roam free. Thank you, thank you, thank you to all of them as they make this piece of haven very enjoyable for all. Thank you, thank you, thank you for coming to Peaceful Village. Thank you for joining me. I'm Michael Landfield. I've been planting like crazy a lot of fruit trees because we want to become sustainable, self-sustainable, and not rely on the system for our support of food, for the system from mega corporations that make so much money off of humanity. And usually they give poor quality junk that really isn't food. First, we need to realize that usually in cold places, when I mean cold places, I mean places that usually you can grow food just part of the year, not the entire year. So if you cannot grow food, and I mean substantial amounts of food, I mean, can you be completely self-sustainable on your land? In a cold place like Edmonton, Canada, or Vancouver, or Washington, D.C., or New York, or I don't know, Finland, somewhere in Finland, or somewhere in Russia, or somewhere so cold that, yeah, even in Mediterranean areas like Spain, or Portugal, or Italy, or Greece, yeah, for part of the time you can grow food, but it's not possible to completely grow all of our food all year round. Now, what I also am talking about is that when we live in these kinds of places, right, where the growing season is not all year round, we have to rely on outside authorities or outside companies or governments, institutions in order to, especially when it comes to our food, we have to rely on mega corporations to provide our food. Now, no matter where we buy our food, if it's from the big stores or if it's from the little guys, the mom and pop shops, it doesn't matter because they're getting their food usually from places that are monitored or that are governed by authorities, by governments. So for example, usually in major metropolitan areas, cities and things like this, like Toronto, New York, Chicago, and so forth, they have what I know as food terminals. Okay? So food terminal is basically a point where all the food goes to. And it's usually what they're talking about here. They're talking about fresh food, fruits, vegetables, meats, this kind of stuff. They go to one area and then they ship it to different sub areas that don't have this kind of food terminal. So where we are, we don't have a food terminal. The food terminal closest to us is several hours away. So then they truck it all the way to the small town, and then from there we have to buy our food. So if we don't get it from the terminal itself, it's going to be much more expensive. But a lot of times we cannot buy from the food terminal. You need to be a company, or you need to show somebody that you have a company and you have a kind of permission to go and buy from these food terminals. So we're relying on the system, right? So even if we are growing our food, even 7, 8, 9 months, what about those other months? Some people say, well, you can take potatoes or some other type of tubers, and you can put them in a cold storage, and you can have them throughout the winter months. Well, there's a lot of implications to this. First of all, look, we're losing tremendously a lot of forests, and we have to grow forest. We have to maintain forests. We're losing so much forest around the world due to usually to animal agriculture. That's the number one cause, animal agriculture. We have to cut down in a forested area, graze the animals, grow their feed to feed to them, even if they're grazing outdoors. It's very unsustainable, all this kind of stuff. So if we're not growing food all year round, 12 months, if we're growing all of our food 12 months of the year, every single day we're growing our food and we have a forest, hey, that's great. Because now we're able to eat all of the fresh food, not old food that is stored in storage. So we have the opportunity to grow all of our own food and to be self-sustainable. Now, the other things about living in these colder places, and I mean cold, I mean where you cannot grow your own food all year round. That's what I'm trying to say. So if you're in a cold place, you have to rely, basically, we have to rely on food from outside sources during the other months. And usually in these colder places and in smaller towns, all this kind of stuff, there's not many, if no, farmers markets during the warm seasons. So yeah, a lot of times we rely either on supermarkets or we rely on ourselves, which most people just go to the supermarket, they buy their stuff and that's it. If they're living in Timbuktu, for example, in the middle of nowhere, well, Timbuktu is in Africa, but if we're living in the middle of nowhere, in the forest or something, we have the opportunity to grow our own food. But then we need a car to go somewhere else in the winter time, in the colder months, when we're not growing our own food. So it's problematic. Also, health-wise, it's not sufficient to be living in these colder places because we're not getting the sun, the warmth that we need, and we're not walking naked. In fact, I take this off. Usually I'm walking naked on the land for the most part. It's not sustainable living in these cold places any longer. There's no reason to be living in cold places. That the whole understanding is to go somewhere warm. And I don't mean going somewhere warm where, like the Mediterranean, or in this kind of areas that really you cannot grow food all year round. So in some way you're still relying on outside sources for our food, water, electricity, this kind of thing. Here, for example, over there, we have, I don't know if you can see, down there, that blue thing there is a barrel. So we're collecting rainwater and the most pristine rainwater. And people say, well, what about, they make excuses that the rust because we have a metal roof, so the rust on the metal roof is somehow going into the water. And it's like, I'd rather drink the rainwater than something else that comes from who knows where and how it's treated. And no matter what it says on the label, it's in a plastic bottle basically, which is very thin. And yeah, this is a plastic barrel, but it's very thick and pretty decent quality. So we taste the difference, the quality in the water. In fact, many times people coming here said that this water is some of the best that they've tasted. So imagine, we're getting water from the rain, the pure rain that nature provides, the universe provides, this kind of thing. And we're growing all of our food all year round. So we have a kind of a food forest. And soon we're going to be planting more and more trees. So in the meantime, we're planting bananas and pineapples and peanut butter fruits and these kind of things. But over time, we're going to have an actual forest, a big forest with trees and everything, where we can harvest our fruit and have an actual forest. Because forest is what we need. We're losing forest at a tremendous rate. So instead of supporting the industries like animal agriculture and monocropping, we grow our own food all year round. Okay? So I just want to mention here that we are actually not growing all of our own food at the moment. We're still buying a lot from the markets outside of our land or from neighbors. But we are starting to grow all of our own food is what I was meaning to say. Well, just to recap this part of the video, is that if we're living in cold places, and I mean cold places could mean anything. If you're not in a tropical area or subtropical area, you're in a cold place. So if you're in Florida or California, you're in a cold place. If you're in Texas, you're in a cold place. It gets very cold in these places. So from what I heard. So what we need to do ultimately is go to a place where we can, and I don't mean in the tropics somewhere, high on a mountain, where we cannot grow our damn food and it's so cold that sometimes we need to wear long sleeves for the most part. I mean going somewhere where it's warm most of the time, it's more pristine, and it's just an amazing area. We need to holistically heal. So if we're not holistically healing in the sun and going to get the sun all year round and walking naked everywhere and this kind of thing, and going barefoot in the soil and putting our hands in the soil and this kind of things, we're not truly living life. We're not truly living life. Now, this is the next part of the question. Is now that I understand that I need to go to the tropical areas of the world, how do I do it? Okay? First, the problem is that we're relying on outside sources for our food, water, electricity, this kind of stuff. What happens one day if somehow they say, hey, you need a chip, a microchip in your body, and now you need to get a chip in order to buy your food or to get water from the municipality system. So there'll be black markets, of course, where people can buy things illegally. But truly, just stop all this nonsense. Just grow our own food in a place that we can basically grow our own food all year round, and that's it. And some people say, "Oh, it's too hot. Oh, I like winter. Oh, I like the changing of the leaves and the colors on the leaves." Stop making excuses. You're going to be sick. You're going to be decrepit, and you're going to be relying on governments your whole life and mega corporations in order to live. you're going to need to obey the laws. And I don't want to obey any laws except for natural laws, the ones that are governed by universal energy. Once we understand that we need to go to tropical areas, people say then, well, how do I do this? Once we have no more excuses and say, hey, I really want to do this, but how do I go to these places? I don't have a family member living in the tropics in nature. I don't have any friends or anybody. I don't know anybody, basically. How do I do it? Well, there are two ways to do this. Well, three ways to do this. Okay, the first two are physical things to do. First is either to get our own land somehow, either illegally or legally. However, legally or illegally, through the government or not through the government. I cannot say which route to take. That's all up to how you feel and what resonates with you. And or the second one is basically to join an existing intentional community that shares your values, all of your values. And third one is meditate on this. So some people say, well, I cannot afford to get my own land, but then I cannot afford to join another community. I'm pretty sure there are communities out there that share your values, that if you're very dedicated and really want to help and live their message of growing all the food and to share the message of their values, basically, then I'm pretty sure that they're going to let you join with very minimal or even no money. So sometimes there are possibilities, ways to do things where you don't really need any sort of money. The only money you would probably need is somehow to get to that place. So if you're living in a cold place, then you just need to know, hey, how do I get from this place to the place I want to be? So there are multiple ways you can do that, again, illegally or legally. So then we need to once we know which route we're taking, if we're going to get our own land or if we're going to join another community. And getting our own land could mean renting a land or leasing a land or rent to own or whatever you call it. The other option is to squat, which basically means that we just stay on a land that we believe is unoccupied for a period of time. This is usually about a year, 6 months to a year. In many countries you can just stay on a land, and if nobody's there, you basically just take it over. You stay for a period of time on the land. It's a long process because you need to know for sure if there's nobody on the land. And you need to ask the neighbors, does anybody live on that land? You need to find out somehow, does anybody live on this land? Once you know that there's nobody living on a land, then you can, and you know how big the land is and the borders and all this kind of stuff, then you can proceed to make it your own. You don't need government papers or anything. At some point, this is like the trickiest route, because at some point somebody might come and claim that it's theirs and they have papers or whatever, deeds to the land. So this is ultimately the hardest, because you never know at what future point somebody can come and claim it as their own land. But this could also be the route that people take. So if someone is taking this kind of way of getting their land, they need to realize that if they're growing their own food and they're there for, I don't know, 10 years or 20 years, however many years or decades, at some point someone can come and ultimately kick them off the land, especially if they have legal papers to the land. Now, if you have proof of some kind of proof that you're there for a period of time and you've been already living on the land, somehow you can get ownership to the land, even though not so much into ownership and all this kind of stuff. Sometimes it's difficult. It's difficult to say what to do, because both routes, doing the squatting and doing the legal way of getting the land through the government, is quite tricky. There's no real solution. I think it just depends on the person or the people that are getting the land, or what intention they have. So this is the whole key, and we need to do this from the feelings from within our hearts. What is best for us at the moment. Now somehow what you could possibly find is you can find someone that shares your values and doesn't really live on the land but shares your values, or maybe they live on the land but then you help them. So it's kind of like you just living with them and helping them and growing your own food. So this kind of things. So there's many possibilities. But let's say what is hindering the person from leaving and going to this magical place in the tropics, basically, is money. Let's say they don't have money, they're struggling, they're going from job to job or paycheck to paycheck, and they don't have the means to go somewhere where it's warm all year round and be able to grow their food 12 months out of the year. So what then happens is that we have to manifest what we want. Sometimes people say it's so hard to manifest things, and yeah, because we're so wounded, we don't know how to manifest anything nowadays. We think manifesting something, you need to work physically hard, make some money in order to do that. But that's because people are so stuck in the material realm of living and being, in the physical realm. So we need to meditate on how we're going to do this. If we're not going to make excuses and just go, and then the third thing is to meditate on it and physically somehow figure a way how we can get there and where we can go, right? So what I've noticed over the years is that people that are really willing to live in nature, grow their own food, live self-sustainably, all this kind of thing, they usually don't make excuses. People that are go-getters usually don't make excuses. Rich people usually don't make excuses. They learn from other rich people. They learn from other people who are doing it successfully. I don't learn from people that are whining and crying in their job saying that they cannot do it, or you cannot do it. You need to go back to the city and start making some money and get a job and making some money and all this kind of thing. And it's like, well, in 5 years or 10 years, you're going to need a chip inside you, probably, in order to buy food. You're going to need to obey the government more and more and more and more in order to get anything that you want. Water, which is contaminated. You're going to need air that is basically polluted in polluted towns and cities. Traffic and noise and all this kind of stuff. I'm telling you, living in towns and cities is not the way to go. Governments want, and big corporations want us in these places so they can control us better. We need to get out of those places, go in nature, and we need to start growing all of our damn food. That's how it is. So this is the key. People don't realize this, but this is how it is. We cannot grow our own food, all of our own food, have a forest, conserve nature in these cold places. We need to be in tropical areas. If in Africa, if in Central or South America, if in somewhere in Asia or Australia, we need to be in tropical areas. of the world. I mean, any kind of tropical area where we're getting the sun most of the year and we can grow our food almost all the time. There's no excuse to be in these cold areas. Because if we do have excuses, we're going to be suffering the consequences of living in these enslaved, concentrated camps, basically called towns and cities, that we rely on outside authorities, outside sources for all of our needs. I have to be here for my kids, or those people are never going to make it. They're going to dissolve. If we're not growing all of our food all year round, or at least starting to do that, there's no hope for us. That's all there is. There's no hope for us.